Hey, my friends, it's Matt. This is a 10-minute Bible Hour podcast. And when I was a little kid, I think one of the first rated R movies I was ever allowed to see was Glory. I know we've talked about that movie before. It's about the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. It's about freed slaves who joined the Union Army and then went back to fight against the Confederacy to free their brothers and sisters who were still in chains. It was just a powerful, powerful concept, a really well-executed movie. It's got young Denzel Washington in it. It's got Cary Elwes in it. I think it was his first role after playing Wesley in The Princess Bride. It was Glory. I can't think of anything else. It's got Matthew Broderick trying to demonstrate that he is more than just Ferris Bueller. I'd like to think that his role in Glory is what ultimately landed him his role as Simba. I don't even know what that statement meant, but I said what I said. And it's all in all just a very well-acted, very powerful show. And whenever I picture a moment where a force arrays for battle to prepare to face the great challenge of their age, and everybody is nervous, but they've got resolve and courage, and they've gone through refinement to get to where they need to be to face the challenge. The arc is complete leading up to this moment, and whatever happens on the field will be whatever happens on the field, but we're there. Whenever I picture that moment of sunrise on the day of battle and the noble commander rallying his troops, riding up and down the line, brandishing a sword, that, for whatever reason, that's the movie I think of. I'm sure some other scene in a similar show imprinted on you, but it's not just that's the movie I think of. That is also the music I think of. James Horner did the soundtrack for Glory, and it's phenomenal. In fact, it's so good that I think a lot of the motifs and movements and subtleties in that Glory soundtrack, I don't think James Horner was ever able to move on from them. I think he incorporated that Glory soundtrack into a whole bunch of other later things that he did. You can hear it in Apollo 13. You can hear it in Braveheart. Then I don't know, other places. I'm going on. But the point is, when I get to Esther chapter 9, and I carefully read the first couple of verses, as we are now to the day, the appointed day, the day that fate, or really God, has decided would be the day that this all gets settled out, I hear the music from the beach in Glory. Dun, da, 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 da. It just rattles around in my brain. I can't help but imagine the nobility of the moment. And this is different because it's not quite everybody lines up on a battlefield and you have a big fight with swords and everything else, and there are commanders on the field and they tell people where to go. We're aware of probably 15, maybe 20 ancient pre-Roman battles where we know all about who moved where on the field and what commanders did what, and it's super fascinating stuff. Now, this is different. This is town to town, village to village, door to door, little micro battles happening all over the empire all at once. And I don't know in Persia how they regarded when you flip to a new day. I know in Gremlins, it's just any time after midnight, then you're into a new day. And I know that's how I think about it, 12:01 a.m., or really 12, right at 12 o'clock a.m. with a second on the clock. That's morning, right? That's a new day. That's where it flips over. I don't know how they rendered that in the ancient world. So I don't know if it was daybreak is when this day technically begins, and as soon as we see the first ray of dawn, it's on. But I have to imagine that everybody is wide awake and ready to go, armed, prepared, people on both sides, those who wanted to see the destruction of the Jews and have been sharpening those knives for months in anticipation. They had expected an absolute cakewalk with the Jews effectively being prohibited from defending themselves. Now, okay, they know they're in for more of a fight. They've been given an off-ramp, the enemies of the Jews. As this morning approaches, as daylight is just about to crack, maybe they're thinking to themselves, I could have bailed on this. I don't have to do this. I could still not have this fight, but everybody who still had weapons in hand and had decided to go, They had made their decision, even with resistance. This was too good of an opportunity to pass up, and the sanctioned killing of their hated neighbors, the Jewish people, was only allowed for one day, and they were going to try to get everything they could out of that one day. But how about for the Jewish people, with renewed hope, already celebrating that this is a victory as they get ready for the first rays of light to creak over the distant hillside so that the whole thing can engage? What are they thinking? I think clearly they believe that God was on the move, the God who had done amazing things in the past, and that all of this stuff would not have worked out the way it had if they weren't sure to experience victory. And so just assuming that the new day in the Persian Empire started at the first light of dawn, I have to imagine those last few moments of anticipation before this whole thing went absolutely nuclear for one decisive day was a very different experience for those on the side of Haman and his ilk than it was for those who were on the side of the Jews. Here's how the text describes it. Verse 2 of Esther chapter 9. The Jews assembled in their cities and all the provinces of King Xerxes to attack those seeking their destruction. No one could stand against them because the people of all the other nationalities were afraid of them. Fear of Mordecai, fear of Esther, fear of Xerxes, fear of the Jews in general, fear of the God of the Jews. I'm sure it was all of those things, depending on what fearful outsider you talked to. But ultimately, as we've discussed, part of the providential beauty of the way this worked out is that Haman's decree drew out of hiding all the people who wanted to kill the Jews and were eager to do so. Mordecai's decree, once they were already drawn out of hiding, gave the Jews the ability to defend themselves and rid themselves of the threat that those who wanted to murder them all posed. The text doesn't spell out exactly how they knew who it was they were fighting against. It assumes, rather, that the reader can do the math on that, especially the original audience could do the math on that. It assumes that the original audience would think about what they knew about Persia and say to themselves, oh, well, yeah, it was very, very obvious who was on what side and who was eager to fulfill the edict of Haman and who was kind of indifferent to all of this and didn't really want to be swept up in this at all. Because really there are three sides here, right? You got the Jewish side, that's pretty clearly defined. You've got Haman's side and the people who want to destroy the Jews, the Agagites, the Amalekites, and other enemies of the Jews who want to see them genocided away. But then you've also got the people who are like, yeah, I don't really have a strong opinion about the Jews. They seem fine. I had heard that they were a thing. I think I know some Jewish neighbors. I guess they seem fine, even if they weren't. I don't think I'd really want to kill anybody, but I understand what's about to happen here, and I really wouldn't want them to mistake me and my family for an Agagite or one of the enemies of the Jews, so we're just going to try to make it real clear where we stand on all of this and try to put our heads down and avoid the chaos of this day. And I think that's part of who we're referencing with the nations being fearful. The people who wanted to kill the Jews, well, they made themselves known, and they're going to be engaged in this fight all day long on the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar. But I think the nations who are afraid of them, those are the people who might have been sympathetic if there hadn't been a counter edict from Mordecai. I think those are the people who might have been sympathetic to Haman's group and been like, well, some plunder opportunity here. Like, I don't really understand the politics of it, the history, whatever, but I guess we're doing a thing, and maybe we wouldn't want to fully participate in that, but, I would want to support my neighbors on their thing that they feel strongly about, and so some of my neighbors are Agagites and enemies of the Jews, whatever. This is your squishy middle crowd. These are the people kind of want to get along, go along to get along. That's how you say it. And now all of a sudden, this little, very probably limited support, but tacit support for Team Haman is completely dried up. It's gone. It is evaporated. nobody is willing to go out and put the neck on their line to help out Team Haman. Rather, this really is going to be settled just between Team Mordecai and Esther and Team Haman, with nobody else really interfering or needing to interfere. And, well, the text treats it like a foregone conclusion, and we're going to work through what that foregone conclusion looks like as we move forward next time around. Okay, one last thing. Camilla and I have finished the design on the Nehemiah notebooks. We tweaked it a little bit. I think it looks really, really good. And those field guide notebooks, as soon as we get them back from the printer, we're going to send those out, I think, with a little bonus thing as well. Still not quite ready to announce that, but it's coming. We're going to send that out to everybody who supports at any level on any platform and anybody whose address is current. And that's an important detail on Patreon, especially patreon.com/thetmbh podcast. Every month, there are a lot of people who think they are supporting, but the card on file expires. And the way Patreon does it is they relegate you to an expired membership location within Patreon. And then when I run the report to print out the labels and send these out, your name doesn't come up there. So if you want to, you can go and double check that and make sure that is up to date, or you can also not, because it's never a permanent commitment to support some little podcast of a guy in his basement forever. So whatever is totally cool. But to everybody who's supporting at any way on any platform currently, including those of you who've kicked in on PayPal or something like that, I'm going to do my best to round up all those addresses and get something out to all of you ahead of the launch of the next season of Nehemiah, which is coming soon. I mean, you're smart. Look where we are in Esther. It's coming down the pike really, really quickly, and it will be upon us super soon. And I, for one, can't wait because I'm having a blast with all of this. Okay, that's it for announcement time. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. I appreciate you all so much. Let's do this again soon.